Hey everyone, welcome! Today we're going to jump right in and boost your English vocabulary with some really useful words and phrases that will help you sound way more natural and precise. Ready to get started?
You know that feeling when you're trying to find just the right word for a big idea, or maybe a really strong emotion, and it's just not coming to you? Yeah, we've all been there. Well, today, we're going to give you some key vocabulary to make your communication that much clearer and more powerful. Let's begin. First up, let's talk about words of power and action. This whole section is about force, conflict, and making things happen. Think of these as your go-to high-energy words for describing a really decisive moment. Okay, so our first word is beat. Now, it's part of a group of words like defeat, strike, or win against. They all have this idea of overcoming some kind of challenge. But while win is pretty general, beat usually means you won against a specific opponent. Let's take a closer look. So to beat someone means to win against them in a direct competition. You hear this all the time in sports, right? You can beat a team, you can beat an opponent, you can even beat your personal best time. We also use it in other ways, like when you manage to beat the traffic by leaving home a little early.
And here is a perfect example. That phrase, beat the champions, is such a common and natural thing to say. It just perfectly captures that idea of a really hard-fought victory against a very tough opponent.
All right, our next word is sabotage. This word, along with the idea of disrupting something, is all about deliberately causing something to fail. Now, disrupt can sometimes be neutral, but sabotage, well, sabotage is always negative. It means you meant to do it.
The big thing to remember here is that sabotage is always on purpose. It's never an accident. It's a planned, often secret action designed to make something fail. You could sabotage a plan, sabotage a rival's project, or even sabotage a machine.
This example from a workplace setting is perfect. When you hear sabotage the product launch, you immediately get this picture of someone secretly trying to make it fail. It's a really strong and very negative word to use.
Next up, we have escalate. And this is a whole word family, right? You've got the verb escalate, the adjective escalating, and the noun escalation. They all describe a situation that's becoming more intense, more serious, or bigger. And usually that's not a good thing.
Just imagine a small problem that starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That's escalating. We often use it with certain little words, prepositions, that are really important. A disagreement can escalate into a fight. Tensions can escalate over a particular issue.
And this is something we can all relate to, right? It shows how a tiny issue can just spiral out of control and become a much bigger problem. The key thing to remember is that escalate describes this process of a situation getting worse and more intense.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit. This next section is all about how we describe people and the way they connect with each other. Our first word in this group is fellow. It's part of a set of words like companion or mate that are all about having some kind of shared connection or experience with someone. They help us to find our place in a community.
So the big idea with fellow is sameness. It's an adjective you stick right in front of another noun to describe someone who's in the same boat as you. For example, you might talk about your fellow students, your fellow travelers, or your fellow citizens. It just instantly creates that feeling of a shared group.
Now, here's a great example from a professional setting. The phrase fellow researchers is short, it's efficient, and it tells you everything you need to know these people share the same job. It's a really common way to establish that connection.
Okay, next let's talk about the word host and its little family, including hostess and the verb hosting. These words are all about the super important social role of welcoming and taking care of guests.
Let's break this down. A host is the general word, and you can use it for men or when you don't need to specify gender. A hostess is specifically for a female host, and the action, the verb, is to host. You can host a party, host a dinner, or even host a big event like a conference.
This example really gets to the heart of what a host does. See, it's not just about providing the space, it's about actively making sure your guests are comfortable and having a great time. It's a really fundamental part of our social lives.
Okay, moving right along to our third section. Here, we're going to look at words that describe states and conditions. So these words aren't about actions, but more about feelings, qualities, or the way something is.
Our first word here is a big one for expressing emotions, overwhelm. Now, you've really got to pay attention to its word family. We have the verb, to overwhelm, and two very important adjectives, overwhelmed and overwhelming. They sound similar, but you definitely can't swap them. Okay, so here's the deal, and this is super important. You feel overwhelmed. That's the emotion inside you. The situation or the thing causing that feeling is overwhelming. So for example, the amount of work is overwhelming, which makes me feel overwhelmed. See the difference?
This is a perfect example of how you'd use it. It's that feeling of just having way too much to handle. And notice that little preposition that follows. You are almost always overwhelmed by something. Okay, next up is stale. This word is kind of related to the idea of something being overused. They both describe something that's lost its freshness. But stale is often used for physical things, like food, while overused is more for, ideas or phrases.
So, stale has two main jobs. The first and most common one is for food that's not fresh anymore, like stale bread or stale chips. But we also use it for things that just aren't new or interesting anymore because you've heard them a million times, like a stale joke or a stale argument.
Here's your classic, everyday example. And listen to that phrase, gone stale. That's the super common way we say it. We don't usually say the bread is stale. We say it has gone stale. It's a simple but really useful little word.
And for our final section, we're getting into some more abstract words. These are the kinds of phrases that help us organize our thoughts and make arguments, especially when we're comparing different ideas.
Okay, let's look at some really useful tools for making comparisons. When you see phrases like in contrast, unlike, or conversely, it's like a big signpost in the sentence telling you, hey, pay attention, a difference is coming up.
Yeah, we call these transition phrases. They're like little bridges that connect your ideas and make your writing and speaking flow so much better. You'll usually find them right at the beginning of a sentence, and they're almost always followed by a comma.
This example just lays it out perfectly. The first sentence gives you one idea, my brother is quiet, then, boom, in contrast, and it pivots directly to the opposite idea. It's just a really clean and logical way to set up a comparison.
All right, and to wrap things up, let's dive into our last word group, memorize, and its family, which includes remember, memory, and memorable. This is all about how our minds work with information. Now, the difference here is subtle but really important. To memorize is the action. It's the hard work you do to learn something perfectly. To remember is the ability you have later to just recall it. Your memory is where you store it. And if something is easy to remember, we call it memorable. This is a great example because it really shows you the effort that goes into memorizing. It's not something that just happens. It's a deliberate, focused process of putting information into your brain exactly like an actor has to do with their lines. And there you have it, a whole new set of words to make your English that much sharper. But, the only way to really make them stick is to actually start using them. So my question for you is, which new word will you try to use first? Thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next one.